This is Off the Front, the podcast about women's cycling, and I'm Elizabeth Emery, your host, coming to you from WIS Sports Radio. My two guests today are illustrator Michi Mathias and superstar cyclocross racer Katie Compton, who compares men and women to apples and grapes. First up is a short conversation with Michi Mathias. She grew up in the States and now lives in Sussex, where she teaches five-string banjo, plays in bands, translates Japanese, makes jewelry, in addition to all her drawing projects. One of my favorites is her graphic vegan recipe cards, which she started as a gift to her son as he headed off to college. Find the link to those cards, her other work, and many of the things we discuss in episode notes on wisports.com. Right now, Michi is working on a graphic novel about the one guy who came up with combining cycling and camping. We talk about his first trip, her research and creative process, and the importance of the bicycle for women. So let's get started. Well, welcome, Michi Mathias. It's great to have you here, and I'm really excited to talk about your new projects. Do you want to tell me a little bit about it?
Okay, well, thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be here. Well, what I'm doing is I'm making a graphic novel based on an 1897 book called Cycle and Camp, which was written by a London tailor. And he was also an expert cyclist and a camper and a sailor and all sorts of other things. He's the first one that put cycling and camping together. He invented a really lightweight tent. And he set off on a short trial expedition in Ireland with three friends, all sleeping in a space about 6 by 6. But it proved that it worked, and he saw it as a way that that your average or even poorer person could actually get out and enjoy a holiday in their own country.
Nice.
So it was a completely new thing at the time, and it led to we have in the UK the Camping and Caravanning Club, and he started that.
So was he the first person who ever camped and combined biking and camping in the whole world?
As far as I know,
wow.
There were a lot of people going off on round-the-world bicycle tours as soon as bicycles were invented, which I find absolutely amazing. I keep coming across other books from the 1890s. I can't help buying them when I find them on eBay. And people were going around the world on penny farthings. But from what I can tell, they weren't carrying things like tents. They were barely carrying a change of socks and staying in whatever local accommodation they could find around the world. So no, T.H Holding is the first one that I know of that I've ever found that actually came up with the idea of making a tent and combining camping with cycling. Yeah. And
do you have the copy of his book?
I do. It took me, what was it? I think 12 years to get my hands on a copy from when I first heard of it, because it's very rare.
And how had you heard of it?
I was lying in bed with a bad back listening to the radio. Well, I'm so glad I hurt my back that day, because I probably, wouldn't have come across it. But I just heard probably a half-hour program about it. And I realized now that it was the 100th anniversary of the organization I mentioned, the Camping Caravanning Club. So talking about their history and how they started. And they read excerpts from this book. And it just sounded really quite funny and adventurous and inventive. And I guess I have to say the reason probably why I was drawn to it in particular is that I had done quite a long cycle camping trip myself earlier. I went across the States and Canada in a previous life. So I was probably predisposed to liking this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And have you discovered much about the idea of, like what the bicycle was like back then and, what it meant to head off on such an adventure?
Absolutely. I mean, bicycles then they had barely invented pneumatic tires about 5 or 6 years before. They only had single gears. And out of the 4 of them, 2 of them had bicycles that we wouldn't even recognize today as bicycles. They were a sort of a hybrid cross between the old ordinary, or what we now call the penny farthing, and the modern safety bicycle. They had a large front wheel which was geared up, so they didn't have to be as large as on a penny farthing. But it was a little bit, if you look at pictures of them, it looks a little bit like an adult riding a tricycle. And they were just about that useful. They were very slow, and they were having to be waited for the whole time on this journey. You don't see them anymore. I think they only made them for a brief period in the 1890s, and they just didn't work out.
They don't look very good.
I went on a mad research trip to the middle of Wales a couple of months ago just so I could see some with my own eyes and get some photos, because they really do feature a lot in this book. So
how far were these guys going?
Oh gosh, I should know this, but I don't. They were out for 3 days and 2 nights.
Okay.
I forget what the total mileage is, but it was considerable. It was a good couple hundred, if I remember rightly.
That is considerable, especially considering the bike.
Yeah, considering, yes, those sort of bikes with, a single gear, and they were going over a mountainous part of Ireland and everything. I mean, they didn't have paved roads either. So the roads would turn to deep mud, lined with sharp bits of pointed, flinty rock to contend with. It was all very difficult.
Yeah. I'm curious about, how they spent the evenings and how did they wash up and cook and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, they would find a farmer's field, pitch a tent according to T.H. Holding's extremely strict list of criteria for where you should pitch a tent. It had to be sheltered, it had to be near water, it had to be out of the wind, it had to be away from a road, all sorts of things. Then they would cook, and he had a tiny camp stove, and he goes into great detail about how he would cook for 4 people on this one little stove, in a very efficient, ordered manner. And then they would get in their, well, they didn't have sleeping bags, they had blankets and things, and they would often hire a wool blanket from the farmer if offered, just for some extra warmth. But they slept 4 across. And then the next night they tried 3 across and 1 at the feet of the other one. They were in like sardines. There's some great pictures in the book, illustrations of the 2 different ways they tried.
Right.
People just would not put up with that kind of thing today. Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I, I also am picturing, there's no power bars.
Exactly. What they would do, they would buy things like loaves of bread in the last town, before they camped. They carried tiny little tins of things. They would have like specially made tins with their condiments in. And they seem to have had things like tinned fruit shipped ahead. First of all, when they went off to Ireland, they weren't just going on the cycling trip. They were going for a whole boating expedition, because that's what they did all the time. So they left one large camp, where they had all this stuff. And then they loaded some of it into their little bags and set off. But, they also did buy things at local shops. And in particular, when it came to lunchtime, it seems that you could simply go up to a cottage and ask for hot potatoes. Sometimes they would see them on baskets sitting outside on a bench in front of a cottage door. And you would just knock on the door and ask to buy some hot potatoes. And that seemed a common thing. So quite a different way from how we camp these days.
Yeah. So when you were riding across the country, were you camping?
Yes.
Oh, you were?
Mm-hmm. I went with 2 friends. We had just, I had a very cheap, horrible, simple little lightweight tent and panniers with all my stuff. And it was proper camping in either campgrounds or occasionally a sort of, what would you say, like a baseball pitch? Or you don't say pitch, what do you say? A field?
Field.
Yeah. So we camped right the way across. We didn't do anything else. Oh, except occasionally you would go to the general store in a little town and say, where can we camp? And they'd say, oh, do you want to come home with me? And, once or twice we did that and slept in a real bed, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, I bet. With a real shower.
Yeah, indeed.
So given that you have camped and cycled for a pretty long time, I mean, going across the country is no small feat. So how did you relate to Holding and his companions and sort of the beginnings of that?
Well, I just think it's fascinating to see how it all started, in the days when not only were bicycles, not what we call bicycles, but, they didn't have batteries, they didn't have nylon, they didn't have zippers. So much of it is just totally different. And yet so much of it is also the same. How you deal with other people. He goes into a great couple of pages about just the need to get on with people in a group. Don't let little differences on any kind of expedition, blow up into harsh words and disagreements. Uh,
Wise words.
yeah, things that are as true today as ever.
Really interesting. I'm sort of fascinated that as soon as the bicycle was created, that this became a thing to do. It's certainly a testament to how, what a great invention the bicycle was.
Oh, absolutely. And especially for women, the bicycle was just a huge factor, I think, in becoming, being able to get about, firstly, and being able to wear sensible clothes, which almost had to be done.
Yeah. I always think, too, about how it must have been such a great way to sort of get some privacy for women.
Yes.
You're on your own machine and going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the struggle to be allowed to wear rational dress. And I think before that happens, you couldn't ride an ordinary bicycle. You had to ride some kind of side saddle machine, which they'd invented, or a tricycle. But you couldn't really quite ride a bicycle in massive clothing. Interestingly, T.H. Holding does come across a few women on his trip. And at one point, he doesn't quite see them because they've gone on ahead, but he hears about them from the mail coach. And at this point, everyone is fighting a tremendous wind that is really hard to push against. And he's wondering, how in the world are they managing, in their voluminous skirts to cycle?
Oh my gosh, that's just terrible to imagine. So how do women take part in your graphic novel?
Sad to say, there aren't really a lot of them. He comes across a few of them, and that's about it. At one point, they are passed by a mail car. And when I say car, I mean a coach drawn by horses.
Right.
And he says, riding on the top of it were a woman with a bicycle and a man with a fishing rod. And they were sort of let off at the top of the hill ahead, and then off she went. And I think he possibly comes across one or two others, but I'm afraid there aren't many women in this book.
Well, that's reflective of the times, certainly.
It is.
Yeah. And so when can we get a copy of this book?
In about 5 years. I hope less than that. I don't know. I know sometimes people do take quite a few years. I started last year to just lay it out, do very, very rough, what we call thumbnail sketches, just to figure out how many pages it's going to be. And I'm afraid it's come out to be 140 pages, and there's not much I can do about that. I can't make it any less. It would like to go longer, really, but I think that's enough. And so far, I've drafted the first 28, and that's taken a few months. So I'm going to have to really up my speed, because otherwise I'm not going to live long enough to finish it.
Also, we want to get to it.
I know. I really want it to get done. I really do. It's quite exciting. But the whole process is fraught with difficulty. Every single thing I draw has to be accurate to 1897. And just today I went and spoke to a vintage clothing expert about colors, because I've got lots and lots of pictures of the suits that people wore. And of course, people wore suits in those days. They wore wool suits to ride bicycles.
Wow.
There was nothing else. Not full-length trousers, the ones that stop at just below the knee. But on top, they're wearing suit jackets, woolen, tweed, and ties and waistcoats, and of course a cap. So I've got loads and loads of photos of these from the wonderful Google images and old bicycle magazines and things, but they're all black and white.
Sure.
So I've been really trying to guess and figure out what colors would be acceptable to differentiate my four main characters. And I've just come back with 4 lovely samples of old, tweed from those sort of days, recreated vintage tweed. So I know I can use a kind of tweedy green, a sort of light brown, a dark brown, gray, black, that sort of thing. But it didn't even extend to blue. These are just very muted natural colors. So the clothing is one thing. And every time something comes up, like someone checking the time, you don't have a wristwatch. I've got to draw pocket watches. I've got to show the scenery of, the actual bits of Ireland they're going through. And luckily, Street View on Google, gives you a wonderful way to do that without having to leave your own desk, although I hope to go to Ireland as well and have a look around. And I think there's plenty of 100-year-old cottages still around because you can just tell from the photos what was there and what wasn't. So, yeah, the research has just been enormous, really, really time consuming and quite a rabbit hole to fall down, I have to say. Quite a fun one.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I had no idea you were putting that much into the historic accuracy. That's awesome.
Oh, no, I really want it to look right. I really do want it to look right. So, bicycle pumps and, just everything that you can imagine. Drinking glasses. I'm not even sure if they would have had drinking glasses in rural, poor cottages. Would they have had earthenware? All these kind of things. I'm still trying to work out some of this. Interesting.
So you're drawing and then you get to the point where they're drinking and you think, oh, shoot, I don't know what they're using.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got a full draft. And as I'm going through it, I think, was this really right? And then I have to go back on Google and do a bit more research.
That's fascinating. We can follow you, though, on your website. You have a lot of good images of what you're working on.
Oh, yes, please do. It's just www.michimathias.com.
Great, and we'll have a link to that on our episode notes. I'm really excited.
Okay, fab. I'm on Instagram as well, where I put some photos. So if you want to find me there, same name.
Great, okay. Well, wonderful. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Great to talk to you and to find out about your project.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Next up is Katie Compton, who certainly needs no introduction for anyone who follows cyclocross. She just won her 14th U.S. National Cyclocross Championship, followed up by a win at World Cup Namur last week. Katie has 23 World Cup wins, 4 medals at World Cyclocross Championships, and has her eyes set on a gold medal at Worlds in a couple of weeks. Here, Katie offers her take on day of prep for cyclocross with rollers, dry clothes, and a few tips for pre-riding the course. We also talk about politically correct equity, focusing on her own good racing while being nice, and the difference between men and women on the course. During our conversation, I mentioned the New Cyclist Alliance. If you want more info about that, a link can be found in episode notes on wissports.com. So here's Katie. Katie, welcome, and also a big thank you for taking this time as you're preparing for nationals to talk to me.
Oh, no problem. It'll be good. I like podcasts, so for me, it's a good thing.
Full disclosure, you and I raced together a long time ago on a team, and I tried to calculate when that would have been. And, I don't remember the circumstances, but I do remember that we talked about your leg pain. So it must have been in 99, I'm thinking.
I think so. And honestly, now that you say that, I think I remember that. But was it on a road team or?
Yeah, it was on a road team, and it was a pretty young team. I don't think it was like a full year of racing, but I don't remember the circumstances.
I know, I don't either. Honestly, it all blends together to me, and I think that's almost 20 years ago, probably.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, let's get to some of the racing. One of the questions I have about cyclocross is, the start is so important. So what kind of warm-up are you doing? And also, do you miss sort of the mellow start of road racing?
I don't mind the fast start just because it's you're kind of on the line with all that adrenaline and like that excitement. So it's kind of fun to start quick because you have actually some place to, like, an outlet for that adrenaline. Whereas in road race or crit, it's like you start a little bit slower. And so that adrenaline outlet it's kind of a little bit more delayed, I guess. So I don't mind the fast start. But I think for the warm up is definitely different for cross than it would be for road or crit because you have an hour in a crit to warm up, and then you also have plenty of time in a road race to warm up. So you don't really do much of a warm up for those races. But for cross, I do a specific. I probably spend 30 to 45 minutes for like a warm up and a pre-ride a few hours before the race, and then prior to the race, I'll do a 45-minute warm up with some intensity, some tempo, some intensity, some fast pedals. I warm up on the rollers so I don't load my legs like if you ride a trainer. I just don't like the way, and I like the way you move on rollers. I like the balance aspect of it. It helps me focus a little bit more. Whereas a trainer, like being stagnant like that, it just cracks me. So, and I feel like it loads my legs a little bit, not as well as rollers do. I feel like I just get a better warm up with rollers. So I'll do 45 minutes on that and then get off about 20, 25 minutes before the start of the race and change into dry clothing, pretty much put my warm warm race stuff on and go to the start line and then do a couple, most of the racers ride back and forth before they do call-ups. And so I'll do a couple starts and keep the body warm before the actual start.
Right. I bet keeping warm is a big deal.
It is. And that's why I change clothes, because if you're doing a proper warm-up, you're going to create a sweat. And so after I get all sweaty, I'll put layers of dry clothes on and then go to the start. And then your body's warm, but you're also dry. And so you just stay warm or you don't get that chill. And for me, I need to stay warm at the start, because when you're going full gas off the line, your body needs to perform straight away instead of waiting 20 minutes to find your legs.
Right, right. And when you're doing the pre-ride, what are you looking for? And, like, are you strategizing that point, or have you already come up with your strategy?
I'm pretty much looking at the lines, and I'm also looking at the ruts to see how deep they are, as well as if they're ruts you want to ride or ruts you want to avoid. I'm looking at the best lines to take. I'm thinking of where I can go hard. I'm riding through the pit to see what the optimum pit box is, so my husband can be in the right spot for, to switch bikes. I'm thinking about tire pressure, what tires I'm going to run, what side of the start grid I want to start on, how long the start stretch is, and if it's a right-hand turn or left-hand turn at the beginning, so I know kind of where I want to be at the start. So it's kind of, and I'm also thinking about gearing, what gearing I want to be in for certain features of the course. So there's kind of a lot of stuff going on that you have to figure out real quickly, because I might have 2 laps maximum to pre-ride. So you have to figure out a lot in those 2 laps. And sometimes I just do 1 lap because that's all I have time for. Or if it's a really heavy, muddy course, 1 lap's enough, because your bike's just so filthy dirty after 1 lap. You almost need a bike change, and you can break a derailleur or, have issues even getting through the course if it's that muddy. So depending on the course, 1 lap or 2 laps. But I just try to learn as much about the course in that 1 lap as I possibly can.
Do you think tactically of where sort of the crucial moments are going to be?
I do, yeah. Especially in Europe. Europe is, since the racing is a little closer and it comes down to maybe the last lap or the last half lap for the race to be won usually. So I will think about, okay, here's a good spot to attack, or here's a good spot where I want to be at the front. Or sometimes I just think like, oh, this is where the winning mood's going to be. Hopefully I'm there for it. Right. Yeah, you never know.
Are there some courses that you prefer to others, or some sort of obstacles and that kind of stuff that you prefer?
I generally like more technical races. I like sandpits. I like mud. Generally, I think the faster courses I don't like as much as maybe a more powerful kind of technical course. I think that's because I'm a big rider, and in a fast course, people that aren't as fast can easily sit on my wheel. And I have to figure out a way to drop them or make a gap so they can't just draft and sit on. So for me, I would say more of a technical power course would be better than just super fast where people can draft.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So watching the race, I've been watching a lot of the World Cup races that are on TV here. I'm paying for it, but it is available. And, the men are tackling the course very differently than the women. So I guess one question is, as an observer, should I be critical of the women? Why is that? And do you have any thoughts about how the men are tackling the obstacles versus the women? And not just the bunny hopping. I know Ellen Noble has been bunny hopping.
Yeah. So the difference between the men and women is a pure horsepower thing. Everything is easier to ride when you've got 300 to 500 more watts for like at the top end, and then just in general. So usually watching the men do it, they make it look so much easier, is because they just have so much more horsepower than we do. So the women are going to attack the course differently than the men, just because we have to use more finesse, and we don't have the horsepower to bunny hop ditches and to maybe ride up all the short, steep hills, because you just need a ton of horsepower, need a power to weight. And women, we're not built like men, so we don't have that pure brute strength most of the time. So for us, we'll look at more, I would say just more finesse based, and more maybe being slightly less aggressive, because we're going to be carrying our speed and carrying momentum, and just not coming into things with as much speed and horsepower as the men are. So they make like riding ups and riding sand and riding mud look a lot easier, just because they've got horsepower. A male body is going to have a higher VO2, stronger bone density, more muscle mass. It's just the way men are built compared to women. Women, obviously, we're just different. So it's different physiology. So you're going to see the men do everything faster than the women, even though the women, it's super fast and exciting and competitive. It's different. Like you'll see, even if you look just kind of across the board, it takes a professional woman in order to keep up with a Cat 2 guy. It's different because like women, you have to train and do a ton of effort just to kind of keep up with the pros, honestly.
Right.
So
is height an issue?
I wouldn't necessarily say height's an issue. I would say it's more of an issue where your center of gravity is. I think some of the better cross racers have a lower center of gravity, so you can get around turns quicker. Whereas a taller rider, your center of gravity is going to be a little bit higher, and you're on a higher, taller bike. So that might make it technical bits a little bit more challenging, I'll say. But usually if they're taller, you have a better power to weight ratio because you're a little bit lighter. So it depends. I think it depends on the rider. It depends on what your strengths are. Yeah,
I was just wondering if bunny hopping, for men was just easier just because they were taller.
No, it's easier because they're stronger. They've got that explosive power, and it takes quite a bit of effort and strength to bunny hop. It's awesome to see Ellen Noble do it because I know it's a really hard thing to do. So the fact that she's doing it well, it's good to see. But yeah, it's usually just a technique and a horsepower thing.
Right.
And you need to be coming into those barriers with enough energy to do it without messing up. And you notice some of the men that as the race goes on, they get more tired and they start making a bunch of mistakes. And that's simply because they're tired.
Right. So as observers or the audience, how would you suggest that we look at the two races? Because, now that the women are racing right before the men, it's unlikely that you're going to watch one and not the other. So, how should we approach it?
I wouldn't approach it as comparing and contrasting. I would approach it as just two exciting races who are doing it differently, I'll say. The women our race is going to be a little bit different. It's pretty dynamic, and I think it's way more exciting than the men's right now. We're going to be riding things differently and picking different lines maybe than the men will be. But the racing is just as exciting because you're still looking at a head-to-head battle between racers, whether that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 racers off the front, or compared to the men's race where there's Van der Poel or Wout off the front and there's 30 seconds in between them and 2 minutes to the next guy. So yeah, it just depends. Like I wouldn't. You may want to kind of look at the different lines the men's and women's races the riders are taking, but I wouldn't compare it as apples to apples because it's not. It's like, we're two fruits, but we're not the same thing. So look at it as like, oh, there's an apple tree. Let's watch these apples fall off the ground compared to, oh, there's some grapevines. Like, how are these grapes going to fall off the vine? Like, it's different. If that was a horrible.
No, I loved it. Oh my goodness.
But it's different. Yeah.
Right. No, that's great. And I do get asked that question a lot, so I'm happy to now have an answer.
Yeah.
So I want to move to equity, and you've talked a lot about equity in the sports and particularly about pay equity.
Yeah.
So where are we at right now?
We're improving. It's a slow process. It's just the way the bike culture has been for many, many years, and things have to change. I think in the culture of bike racing, it's getting there, but it's just a slow process. So I think we need, obviously, the more media attention, the more TV coverage, the more respect for racing in general has helped a bunch. And I think we're moving that direction, but it's still going to take some time. And I still think it's going to be having men step up too and say, what's going on here? We need to make sure we're doing everything equal for the men and the women, especially when the women are putting on a show better than the men are right now too. Right. So we should be paid for putting on a show just like the men get paid for putting on a show.
Do you have support from the men?
I think the younger generation, for sure. I think the younger the men are, the more equality they want and see, just because that's the way they've been raised. Whereas I think older generation of men, they have a different perspective on things. And, if they're, 50, 60, 70 years old, they're just like women. It's a different perspective. They don't expect women to be equal in anything. Like, And you see it you see it especially in U.S. politics right now too. So it's annoying, but I feel like it takes the men's generation to say something and to push for it, as well as women to continue to push for it. But the thing is with us, we have to do it within like a politically correct way. Like if we push too hard, then we get so much pushback that it kind of does us a disservice. So it's like we have to push, but we also have to do it in a way that isn't going to piss everybody off, which is annoying because the men don't have to do it that way. But I've learned over the years that there's a certain way you can kind of push what you want, but you have to do it within a certain way that just doesn't make people angry and want to say no just to say no.
Right. I'm really excited about the Cyclist Alliance on the road side because people who are not, who used to be riders but are no longer riders are in charge. Yeah. And so I think that's going to give them a really good advantage because they can be less politically correct.
I think that is. And I think that's something that women have needed. And I know the women who put that together worked really hard to do so. And I think it's really going to help quite a few of the women, especially on the road scene, because the road scene is not the mountain bike or the cross scene. And I feel like the road scene needs it the most. They need that help. They need that support. And they need to come together to really promote women bike racing and kind of equality as a whole.
They also have a tougher TV request on the road.
They do. And honestly, the TV, there's so much to the TV rights and who owns things and the playtime for it. It's kind of beyond the scope of what I can actually understand. But there's a lot of TV rights and people owning a whole pie and not want to give anything of it up. And so that's kind of the issue with TV coverage for women's racing is, and also for all sponsors making money and profit sharing because there isn't any. So if one company owns the whole piece of the pie and they're making money, why are they going to give any of it up just to give it up?
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that need to change just to help bike racing in general make money on the men's and women's side. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. I don't see anything drastically changing just because it's so hard to change. I kind of like compare it to like our U.S. healthcare. Like it's so bad that there's so much things that need to change where it's like, where do you start? And that's kind of similar with the TV rights in Europe too. It's like, where do you start to somehow make everybody money instead of just one company?
Well, that was one reason I was so happy that Trek stepped up and made equal prize money for the race in Waterloo, because it was like somebody just made a decision to do it and did it. And I love that. Yeah.
And that was the CEO, Chad Brown, just decided, I'm sure he got the go ahead from maybe John Burke, but yeah, he just decided this is the right thing to do. Why aren't we paying equal anyways? And I think the big issue with other World Cups not paying equal is because it's so much money and they've got to raise twice as much, which in the whole thing, it's like, yeah, you should. But like, well, maybe instead of having to raise twice as much, why don't we just take the money that they have now that every World Cup has to put together, and instead of paying the men 40 places and twice as much and women 20 places and half as much, why don't we just take that whole pool of, I think it's 80,000 euros and split it 40-40 and pay 20 places each? Like, why aren't we doing that? And that's not hard. The promoters don't have to create any more money. We just, take 80 grand, say 40 to the men, 40 to the women, and pay 20 places deep. And that fixes it. That's not a hard problem to solve either. But the way it is now is the UCI doesn't want to change it for the men. We can't pay the men any less. It's like, no, you could. We could just split it equal like they do in the mountain bike. The mountain bike men and women make the same money. They got the same prize list. And they just split it 50-50. And we should do the exact same thing for cyclocross World Cups. Why they don't, I don't know. But I feel like that's a super easy way to change, and promoters won't have to find an extra $40,000 just to, pay a woman purse out.
I totally agree with you. And people look at me with like big deer eyes when I say that. But yeah, definitely. But you're going to piss somebody off. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I think you're going to piss some of the men off.
Right.
But it's like, I don't feel like a man who's finishing 30th should get any money in a World Cup. Like, who cares you're finishing 30th? Nobody pays attention to that. Like, I figured unless you're in the top 20 of a World Cup, why are you making any money? Like, you should do better. And finish in place to make money. That's the whole point of racing at the high world-class level of an event, is you get paid to perform. So if you're performing for 30th, does it really matter? Why don't you just pay top heavy in the top 10 and then pay 10 through 20 in the same amount? Like, if you're finishing 12th or 17th, honestly, it's, who cares? Like, you do. Maybe your parents care, but like nobody else, nobody else pays attention to that result.
Right.
I mean, honestly, like, does anybody know where I finished in the Iowa World Cup after I crashed? Probably not. I finished 19th. I only know that because somebody told me after the race, but I don't care to look it up because it's too far back to matter. So that's my perspective on it.
Again, I agree with you. I was like, if I'm not top 10, it's like, I don't know. I'll tell my mom, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I figure if you have to look at the result sheet to see where you finished, to see if you got prize money, do you really need prize money? Like, really? But I don't know. That's just my perspective.
So what do you see the consequences of, both short-term and long-term consequences of equal pay?
I only think it's going to be better in the long run. Like, if women can make more money in the sport, they're not going to have to work full-time jobs or have a partner to help support them, and they can actually train and get faster and prepare for races properly, and it just makes the women's field more competitive and more fun to watch. So, there's no reason why it can't be equal, and I think we just have to keep pushing for that, and it'll just be good in the long run.
What percentage of the field have jobs?
I would say the majority of the field. It's hard to tell, but I would say the majority of the field does. Maybe 80% probably have jobs.
Wow. That's
maybe
a lot.
70%. It's a lot. I would say, like, for a woman not to have a job as a pro bike racer, you're really good at what you do. And you're also a little bit lucky too, because you've been able to work out the sponsorship dollars to support you to be able to race and train full time and travel. And it's very hard to do. I've been in this situation, I've been a professional since 2007. And I say professional because I've actually gotten paid to race my bike. I don't consider professional if you have a professional license, but yet you don't get paid to race your bike. Because that's like, yeah, you got a professional license, but you're still not getting paid for your job. So that's hard to put in the professional category. But yeah, so I've been lucky enough since 2007, but I've had sponsors that have stepped up and supported me. I've gotten good results. I've really worked hard. My husband and I have really worked hard to find the sponsorship dollars and make it happen. And it's not an easy world, and it's not easy to find dollars. And, if I can be one of the top cyclocross racers in the world and still have to work hard to find that money, like, what does a woman do if they're finishing 10th? Like, they're good, but they're not winning races and on the podium every weekend. So it's a hard market, and it's something you have to work for, and you've got to put yourself out there and pretty much ask for money and be okay when people say no and just move on to the next one.
Right. I was really struck by something that I read that you wrote about, being one of the top cyclocross racers in the world and still having to struggle to make ends meet. And I think that's that's what's not discussed, like sort of the individual person who is winning all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is hard. And it kills me to see one of the top cross racers in the world, and compared to maybe one of my male equals, I'll say, that is making six figures. And I'm seeing, like, the amount of money that, like, Vanderpool pulls in, or like Wout pulls in, and how much money Sana Kant pulls in. It's just like, there's a huge difference there. And why is that? Like, they're going to be set for life, and we're just making enough to get through our racing career, and then we have to figure out what's next. Hence why most women have college degrees, because we have to plan for our future post bike race, because we need to find jobs to pay the bills.
Right.
Whereas the men, a lot of the top men, they're set for life if they want to be. If they invest it properly and live within their means, they don't have to work again. So It's different.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, too, that one of the consequences of the low pay for women cyclists is that not many of them come back to the sport once they retire because the finances are so bad.
And why would you? If you've been trying to struggle to make ends meet just to race your bike because you want to race your bike, why would you retire from bike racing to continue to be poor? Like, that doesn't make any sense, especially when you're smart. Like, most of the women bike racers are pretty darn smart. If you look at our field, a lot of them have PhDs and MDs and master's degrees, and they're smart women. So why would they continue to be poor when they've got an education and they can make money doing something else? A lot of women do it because they love racing their bike. So once they're done, it's hard to continue to stay in the sport when you know how hard it is and you're kind of over the racing bug and you want to do something else in your life.
Right. But what that leaves is, fewer women in management, fewer women in coaching, and that's a rough go.
It is really rough. Yeah. And that's the sad part of cycling. And it's going to take, I think, some women to just make a decision where they're going to try to fight and continue in it, regardless of how much money there is, just so they can set up the next generation to have more experience or more opportunity than we had. I mean, I like to see, like, now I've been racing since 2007. I started racing cross like 2004 for actually legit elite cross. And I've seen the progress for women's bike racing in general. And it's also part of the reason why I want to continue racing is because I've seen where we started and I'm seeing where we are. And I'm seeing like the younger riders get support early. I didn't have that support. And it's like, it's awesome to see that women in their early 20s will actually get sponsorship support. We'll be able to get to races. We'll start earning a paycheck. Like, that's awesome to see because in my generation didn't have it. So I think it's important to kind of see the progress and see the change, as slow as it is that it's moving the right direction. We just have to keep pushing at it.
Do you imagine staying in cycling when you retire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do love racing my bike and I love cycling. I love cyclocross. I want to keep helping it grow and seeing like a younger generation come up and race. And I've just really enjoyed it. I've been in it my entire life. I don't see myself stepping back and not doing it again. I'll probably race masters. I'll probably do something just to like keep it interesting. I'll do it to be fit, and then hopefully I'll be able to work in the bike world to a point where I can just stay in it and stay relevant, I guess. And I'll probably continue to coach and stay in it that way too, because I enjoy coaching.
I've read a couple of articles recently that you talk about aging. Are you feeling old?
Some days I feel older than others. And it depends on, honestly, some Mondays after a double cross weekend, especially in Belgium when the cross races are really hard with like muddy, hard races or quite a bit of running, or if I crash or, make mistakes, whatever, and my body's kind of sore. I do wake up Monday, Tuesday, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not.
I haven't recovered
25.
yet.
Yeah, I'm not 25 anymore. But like, I remember that when I was learning to mountain bike as a teenager, I would crash and tumble and roll, and I would crash a lot and get back up. I was never sore the next day. Like, I didn't even remember like ever being sore. And then I think every year you get older, you're just like, how does my neck hurt? And like, I feel like I bruised something, but I don't remember hitting anything. Why does that hurt too? So I mean, it's normal. The human body ages and our hormones change and we get older. It's just the way it goes. You just have to adapt and, try to stay as fit as possible and take more fish oil. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have nationals coming up. You have a lot of followers and a lot of fans. What's it like, having all that pressure, particularly since you've won nationals for so long?
Honestly, I don't feel any of that pressure. I think I've been doing it for so long. I think you just learn to kind of push that out and not focus on it. I just focus on what I can do and how I'm feeling and kind of the race I want to have, and don't worry about any other outside pressures, honestly, because it doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't help you at all. You can only give what you have on that day, and it's either enough or it's not. And whether you put more pressure on yourself to perform, it just doesn't get you anywhere. So I try not to focus on that and just focus on, what my body can do and being smooth and racing well and not making mistakes. And I feel like focusing on that process makes it kind of takes your anxiety away from thinking about what happens if I don't win, or what happens if I let people down, or what happens if I have a bad race. Because that maybe dwelling on those negative thoughts, it just makes things worse. So I try not to.
How do you balance that attitude with, being nice and kind to the people who are interested in your racing?
Oh, I always try to be nice and kind in general because I feel like we need more nice people, like, as is. So I try to be generous with my time and chatty at races and talk to people, mainly because, if you're a fan, you're out here coming to meet me or watch me race or come out to watch cyclocross. I think it's awesome that you're interested and you like the sport, and I want to kind of help nurture that. So if I can, I always make time to chat to people and sign autographs and just to be available as much as I can. There comes a point where I'm just like, no, I actually have to go to the start line, or I've got to warm up. I've got to focus on what I'm doing. But I definitely try to go out of my way to make sure if people want a little bit of my time, that I'm gracious enough to give that to them, just because, part of me, as a bike racer, I need to get results, but also as a bike racer, you need to promote the sport. You need to promote your sponsors and be available and be personable and talk to people. I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Well, you have the Nationals this weekend, and then you head back to Belgium?
Yeah, I head back to Belgium on Wednesday. And
are you ready for World Championships?
I think so. I mean, it's always a tough time of year for me because I'm usually pretty tired with the travel and the jet lag back and forth. But this year, since I've based out of Belgium, like, I feel good. Like, I'm feeling strong. Mentally, I'm not even tired yet. Like, I'm kind of bummed the race season is going to be over soon. I think I've got 5 more races yet left, including nationals. So I think that I feel kind of sad about that. I'd like to kind of continue racing. So that's a really good sign. In years past, I'm usually pretty tired at this point. And now I just feel like I only have 4 weeks left, and I'm kind of sad that it's almost over.
That's a great place.
It is a good place. Yeah. And I'm feeling fit, and like, my legs feel strong. So, I'm hoping the rest of the season is a good, strong finish for me.
The racing has been really exciting over in Belgium, and, the field looks like it's just getting stronger and stronger. It
is. I would say if you look at the start line, the start grid, anyone from the front 2 rows can be on the podium. And even if you're some of the good riders starting in the back because they don't have points, they can even be on the podium. So it's awesome to see. I think the women's racing has really grown this last couple of years, especially this season. The amount of talent at the front, the amount of strong riders at the front, and racing hard every weekend, and having different people on the podium every weekend is also pretty fun to see. So I think it brings a little bit more excitement to the spectators because they want to watch the race because they're like, I don't know who's going to win. We're going to see. And I just find that more entertaining than having the same person win every weekend.
Right. Well, thank you, Katie. I really appreciate you taking the time. As I said, is there anything that we didn't get to that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I think you covered a lot of stuff. I'm just happy to be in cross still and racing well, and it's been a long career, and I've enjoyed it. I'm happy I can continue to do it.
Yeah, well, we've been rooting for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, have a good race on Sunday, and I'll look for you.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
A big thank you to both of my guests, Katie Compton and Michi Mathias, for spending time with me. Off the Front can be found at wissports.com and on Wis Sports Radio, which is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play for download to your podcast player. With over 700 episodes across 30 unique shows and a global audience of 1.5 million, Wis Sports Radio is the world's largest network of podcasts for women in sport. We are also on all the social media channels at Wis Sports, and if you would like to drop us a line with suggestions, comments, or questions, email us at info@wissports.com. For more of me, Elizabeth Emery, listen to my other podcast, Hear Her Sports, available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts, and of course at hearhersports.com. Find me also on social media at Hear Her Sports. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next month with another episode of Off the Front.